Good morning, Geauga, Lake, Northeast Ohio, and the rest of the world. You're listening to Voice of Geauga and WINT Radio, 101.5 FM, 1330 AM. This morning we've got Skip Claypool, myself, Jonathan Broadbent, and we have guest Joe DeBoff joining us. Joe is somewhere remote. We can tell that he is remoting in from a hotel room somewhere to talk about his bid for the auditor's office. He's running for auditor of Geauga County. Welcome, Joe. I'm going to set things up, but only in a moment. I want to flip things back to Skip, who is getting the live stream set up. Skip, are we live on Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube?
We are live right now on both all three, Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. And I had a little glitch with my camera. Now I'm back up and running, so people will be able to see us. We've got some folks joining us on Rumble. I can see them clocking in right now. I can see how many people are clocking in, so that's kind of nice.
Welcome all.
And so if anybody wants to get a hold of us here at Voice of Geauga, and we transmit our radio program Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. If you want to call us, you can call us at 440-946-9468. You can always email us at voiceofgeauga@gmail.com. I'm getting a lot of input from people, which is great. I love reading the notes, and people love our program. They're giving us a lot of positive feedback. We had one guy that said we're garbage, but I guess if 90% are saying we're great, I'm going to go with that. And so if you're listening to the program and you want to comment to us, you can always call us 440-946-9468. You can plug into our Rumble channel. We have a very active chat group on our Rumble channel, or Facebook, or YouTube. We generally get more activity on Rumble. And so I will also mention that we are being sponsored by Great Lakes Outdoor Supply, and we have other sponsors that are coming on board. And if you'd like to sponsor this program on the radio, or be involved with our new newspaper that just got mailed out to every home in Geauga County, then let us know. We'd love to have you sponsor this program and help us to get the message out, get the word out to people across our county. If you happen to be a candidate, I'm going to be reaching out to you across the board. Every candidate is welcome on this program. You'll be treated with respect and with dignity, and we'll just be asking you some tough questions and having some fun. And so if you're a candidate, let us know that you'd like to be on the radio. And if you'd like to place an ad in the paper, of course, you're welcome to do that. So with that said, I'm going to flip it back over to you, Jonathan, and you can introduce Mr. Joe DeBoff, who is running for county auditor in Geauga County. He's also a business guy and traveling around the world, so he's a pretty busy guy, and he's got kids and a family on top of all that. So go ahead, Jonathan.
All right, so I've had the opportunity to sit and speak with Joe DeBoff personally, and I'm impressed with his business acumen and background. So I'm thankful to have the opportunity to dive into all things Joe DeBoff. Joe, let's begin at the beginning. This is Voice of Geauga. How long have you lived in Geauga, and what brought you here?
Well, first, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Skip and Jonathan, for inviting me to your show. It's a good opportunity for me to get my voice out here, get people to know me. I know folks where I live in Auburn and Bainbridge. I think some of them know me well. Some of them are beginning to know me a little bit more. But ultimately, I've been in Auburn Township, moved from Pittsburgh to Auburn about 21 years ago, and live in the same house. Got a little quarter-acre pond in the back. We currently have, some chickens. We've got a couple goats, right? So we're trying to make the most of living in Auburn. Started building some raised beds last year that I actually produced compared to my other garden. So really enjoy the attributes of characteristics of Geauga County. So we, my wife and I, Melissa, some of them may know Melissa on the call. We're currently attending Parkside Church. That's what we call home church. So from raising kids, supporting Kenston, where our kids go to school, and then Parkside, and then traveling for this job. Yeah, it is a busy schedule, but I think the opportunity that's in front of me with Otter is something that I would like to do. I think I have the skill sets, and hopefully this call will kind of help educate some of the folks out there on who I am. People don't know my experience, so little by little, I'm hoping that people hear my experience and just kind of correlate what I've done in the past to the auditor position. And I really think I have a lot to offer, and hopefully that'll come across on this call today.
So, Joe, you have a background in being involved in community, and namely, I've seen you, I've watched you for years get very involved in the County Republican Party, and you served recently as treasurer of the County Republican Party, doing an excellent job of maintaining the books, the financial records, and consistently following up on that. So there is a local background beyond just, and I love hearing about the gardens and chickens, and it's just very Geauga, and that's excellent. So tell us about your involvement in politics.
Well, like most of your listeners, well, maybe not, but politics was foreign to me about 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I followed politics, back, in Pittsburgh. I helped out with a Republican campaign. And so, but I wasn't necessarily in tune. My life was more of a priority than politics. But when COVID hit, I got, something didn't feel right. It still doesn't feel right. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But it got me like, what is really going on in the world? And I thought politics might have some answers for me. So I just attended some, events, and over time I talked to some folks. They got me connected to the Republican committee, and I signed up, and now I was a member. It kind of all happened very quickly for me. So I went from not being involved to being both feet in, and then we had a change in treasurer position, and I got nominated for the treasurer. I volunteered. It's not a glamorous job for anyone who wants this. It's zero pay, and it's a lot of busy work. But ultimately, it got me involved and got me in front of folks that I normally wouldn't have. So I got to meet a lot of folks, candidates, which is what I really wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that I was supporting someone that I believed in. And so partly is just getting involved and talking to people like you're talking to me. It's like, who is this person? Who is this Joe DeBoth? I wanted to know, hey, who is this Steve Dimitru? So I got to have coffee with him, talk to him, and I've been able to talk to a lot of different candidates to determine, hey, I can put my, I can back this person. I feel good about this, because oftentimes you back someone and then they get sucked into the system, and it's like you don't know this person anymore. So I really wanted to get to know people up front, kind of believe in them, and that's what I'm hoping, that people can believe in me and then cast their vote for me come May 5th.
You bring up a very good point there, and a consistent theme on this show is citizen legislature. This show started because a good handful of us care enough about what's happening that we want to push for better answers and get news and information out. And that ultimately is why we're here. So hats off to you, Joe DeBoth, for being one of those people willing to step in. You have a busy life, you have a family, you have a career, you travel quite a bit, but yet the world in Geauga County is important enough to you that you threw your hat in the ring, and you bring up a very relevant point, that what you've done so far. It doesn't pay. There's no income. You're certainly not doing it for glory. You're doing it for the good of community, and that is admirable. Let's focus for a moment on the auditor's office and what you're finding, what you see, and in a few moments I want to get into your skill set and how that applies. But what do you see in the auditor's office as priorities? What are key priorities of the auditor's office?
Well, I think, just looking at the compliance piece, I'm kind of half finance accountant, half consultant, and we'll get into that experience in a little bit. But ultimately, I put on I'm an inactive CPA, so I kind of went down that path in my late 20s, early 30s. And I understand the importance of just compliance and then managing a very tight audit. And not saying every audit is perfect. I expect, there's going to be some findings. That's to be expected. However, there's a trend with the auditor's office when it comes to certification of the state of Ohio. And I have some content on my website. There's a graph that kind of shows the number of days until certification. And it seems like over the last, 4 to 5 years, that has been extended, from 1 year to almost 2 years. And I'm like, okay, that's odd. And I start looking at the other counties and doing a county comparison just as a baseline. And you start to see that, hey, there's something that's a little bit off. And I don't know what the reasons are, right? I can speculate, but that's all I can say is it's an indicator that.
Sounds like you're describing delays, and we want to drill down further into that, but we've got a break coming up, Joe. I'm sorry to step on your toes there. Remember, you can join the conversation either online, Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube, or dial in 440-946-9468. We'll come back with more from Joe DeBoth on the other side of the break.
Mics are off, mics are off.
All right, so just a note to those of us following us on the podcast, you are seeing a behind-the-scenes glimpse of what happens on the radio show, Voice of Geauga. So you get to join us for our breaks and listen in as we talk about what's going to happen on the next segment when we come back from this commercial break. So Joe, I do want to drill down into what that represents when we come back. We've got about a 2-minute break here, but what if you have any suspicions of what causes those kinds of delays, and we can get back to that on the other side of the break, and anything else that you feel is relevant and important. We've got a good question, a couple of questions here. Dorothy in Rumble says, I just got the reminder for the Geauga Women's Republican Club meeting. Will Joe be there, or any of the other candidates that Voice of Geauga has interviewed? Bring your signs, Dorothy suggests. If you have signs between now, I actually don't remember the date of that. Oh, somebody says that's March 26th at Geauga West Public Library. Joe, do you have plans to go to the Republican Women's Club event?
I was aware of something at Cerna's, so I wanted to respond to that, but this is something that's new that I'm writing down. But if I'm not traveling, I will make an effort to go to these for sure.
Okay.
Joe, are you familiar with the huge budget increases like in ADP, 30% increase? Have you seen the budget numbers?
I have seen, I've done some reports actual, but I've not seen the budget for 2026.
I'll forward you some information, and it includes some charts, and it shows significant budget increases across the board in the county. There are certain offices that are kind of holding steady, but the auditor's office and ADP have just taken a huge increase, and that's something that people are aware of the auditor and what's going on in the auditor's office that you might want to talk about in your campaign. So
I can talk about it today too.
Okay. Great. Yeah, these are the kinds of things people want to drill down and try and feel like they have.
There's also a new effort on the part of ADP to unionize, which is in Geauga County like unheard of.
30 seconds,
So.
30 seconds.
Oh, give me a softball, Skip. Let me talk about that.
I'm surprised it hasn't come up already in the chat. People are hot on the heels of that. All right. Well, I'll leave with
10 seconds, 10 seconds.
welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool, myself, Jonathan Broadbent, and our guest, Joe DeBoth. Before we went to break, Joe was talking about some delays in when the information from the auditor's office has been coming out. And it sounds to me like Joe has done some comparative and In other comparable counties, a 1 or 2 year delay is not common. What do you think that may suggest, Joe?
Well, I'm not going to speculate, Jonathan, because I don't. That has to come from the auditor's office. I know from managing audits in the past, in business environment, not in the government environment, that any delays is typically it's with data, it's with the presentation of data, and then there could be some issues with internal controls. And so the internal control piece is really important to me. I think it's important to all of Geauga County, given the scams that are out there. We just learned from West G that there was a scam. And so the internal controls piece is something that I looked into with the state of Ohio as well. So they do perform I would say, an internal controls in regards to federal funding. And the federal funding can comprise upwards from 10 to $15 million of really just grant money that's given for specific purposes to the county. It's distributed based on some of the criteria. But you look at that, and I have a chart on my website with the federal monies, and they've been cited for internal controls. Now, some of them I read into. I mean, it's more of a slap on the wrist. But there was one material weakness that kind of sticks out. Like, how did this happen, right? And you look at this, and there's a breakdown of, I would say, common procedures that folks should follow that they weren't being followed. And because it's a material misstatement, it could actually have a significant material impact to the financial statements. It doesn't mean cash is at risk. It just means that the way it's been reported could be misleading to the public, to us. Given that the auditor and the auditor's office fixed it, right? It was sort of outside, kind of on the peripheral of their domain, but it's something of great importance where that's one of the primary objectives of the auditor's office is making sure that of compliance, right? Compliance to grant, compliance to procedures. And I would say they've done a decent job. I just think I would look at that with some pair of fresh eyes and make some recommendations. We haven't gotten my background, but I'm a very process-oriented person from a consulting perspective. We've done with from the SEC for publicly traded clients that look at control points, making sure cash is protected, separation of duties, et cetera, et cetera. So not that Geauga County is a Fortune 500 company, but it has 700 employees, and those employees just need the proper training, proper procedures, and a proper understanding, and then subsequently the proper supervision that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it's not a slap on the wrist of anyone from Geauga County. It's just saying that, hey, there are issues, and we need to take a look at this. So I don't make a bigger deal than what it is, but it's something that I would look at.
I love that idea. Fresh set of eyes, drilling down and getting into it. I just want to get a question out really quickly, and I want to flip it over to Skip for some comments. But Joe, you've mentioned your website twice. Give our audience the website. Where do they find you and find out more about you?
It's easy. It's Joe, 4, Geauga.com.
Joe, 4, Geauga.com. Skip, you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, Joe touched on something, and he talks very much in accountingese, which I can appreciate being out of the business world, but many of our citizens listening may bore them to death. But let me throw out this question for you. When I was a commissioner, we had our CIO who worked for, at that time, the auditor, who was stealing some money. And process and procedure is where he finally got caught. But over time, he was able to breach the system because he was able to breach the process. And so he was ultimately caught because of some glaring problems that he created, which was like a shining light on his activity. And we had some whistleblowers that kind of called him out on it. So, but when I asked the auditor, I said, "Why wouldn't the problems that were created by this individual Wouldn't that have been caught in an audit? And the comment from the state auditor was no, because all the state auditor does is audit for process and procedure. They don't audit to see if somebody's doing something inappropriate. So you have to do a performance audit for that, or a forensic audit for that. And so, as an auditor, the taxpayers want to be able to trust our system. And when we see some shenanigans going on, how can we, as the auditor's office, ensure that we're doing the right things in order to make sure there's not leakage, that there's not problems, and even across the county, but even in the auditor's office? Do you have any comment on that?
I mean, the biggest issue with businesses and possibly governments is just the vendor, right? The supplier process. And so there are ways to circumvent the process. For instance, I want to outsource IT work. So I can take a contract that say it's $100,000. I can break it down into 4 components, right? So it's under the radar, because that I know that we have checks for anything above 25,000. So I'll give you, Skip, 24,000, Jonathan 24, someone else 24, and myself, and we'll just, you break down the contract in the different smaller components, and then you kind of distribute it out in different funds, so it's really hard to pick up. But ultimately, it's one contract to one vendor. And it's hard, unless you're like a data scientist. And I'm good at data, but I'm not going to sit there behind the auditor's desk and look at vendor transactions most of my time. And this is what's going on with what the trends are. And I hate to I'm not sure how your audience is in favor of this. I struggle with this, but artificial intelligence is something that folks are starting to use. And they're able to, imagine this, you have artificial intelligence looking at the vendors, looking at the addresses, and they're compiling areas where you should look at. So it's more of a dashboard view of where you may have some issues. And that's where I think it becomes more, it's a good tool to have. Artificial intelligence, once it starts to bleed into human decisions, I have some issues with that. Unless it's contained and ruled by human. But when it comes down to identifying issues within the data itself, that's a tool that I would recommend, exploring, and that's one way to kind of identify that ahead of time. Skip.
It sounds like you're talking a lot about pattern recognition. I do want to interject. Skip mentioned that this show is being brought to us by Great Lakes Outdoor Supply. We do also have VFW. Chardon and VFW Middlefield and American Legion. So thank you to our sponsors for this show. They help keep us on the air and host conversations with fine folks like Joe DeBoff. So Joe, let's imagine day one, you're elected, you sit behind the auditor's desk. What is kind of priority one at a high level? What do you look for, and what steps do you take just to make sure that everything is on the up and up in the auditor's office?
Yeah, I would take 2 approaches, Jonathan. One would be tactical, which we talked about. Everything we just talked about up to date is more tactical, making sure that everyone understands and assessing the tools, the software that we have, making sure that folks are trained adequately. Just an overall, I would say, high-level assessment there. I want to invest into the employees, right? And so I want to make them better. And so for me to do that, I need to understand where they are, what the gaps are, and then determine kind of the training plan to kind of close that gap. Because I look for people smarter than me, right? I'm not the one that, I don't necessarily want to look for someone, I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be the dumbest person in the room where I can depend upon the folks making decisions on my behalf. So to do that, I need to educate in some cases, and they need to educate me as well. Secondly, it's more, there's more on the tactical side, which I won't bore to Skip's point. I could probably go on for a good couple hours on tactical. But I think what is more strategic And so what I'm accustomed to in business, and I think you folks who, it's more of a strategic plan, right? What are we doing? Where are we spending the taxpayers' money?
Sorry to step on your toes, Joe. We have a break coming up. We've got to pause once again. Remember, you can join the conversation at 440-946-9468. We'll come back and continue the conversation with Joe DeBoth on the other side of the break.
Mics are off. Mics are off.
Hey, Joe,
remember that we are still on with our podcast. So, podcast audience, you're getting a behind the curtains glimpse of our discussion. I do actually, when we come back, I do still want to get to some of the questions that are in the Rumble chat. Like Dorothy, I plan to get to you. Sorry, Skip, you were saying something?
Yeah, Joe, are you familiar with the chaos that was created with Judge Grindell and all of his legal billing and all that kind of stuff? Are you familiar with that?
Somewhat. I haven't looked at the details, so I would be hesitant to really opine on what happened and what we need to do.
Okay, maybe something you might want to look into. Are you familiar with the Metzenbaum fiasco? The auditor wanted to charge the county real estate tax on county
again, I'm familiar with it. Am I prepared to go into details on this? No.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, there's things that the auditor. I mean, the auditors are supposed to audit. They're supposed to take care of process, procedure, make sure checks are paid, and so forth. I, as a citizen, am somewhat concerned that our auditors off the reservation a little bit on some of these other things. But it's stuff for you to look at. Just suggestion.
All right. Well, keep the questions coming. I'm going to lead the when we get an opportunity on the other side of the break. I'll come back with the question Dorothy has posed about the Republican Women's Club. I'd love to see that as vibrant and active as possible. And it's a good question whether or not Joe and others maybe who are running for office will show up. And I hope that, Joe, you're able to. I think it's a good opportunity to answer questions, meet people.
Yeah, no. I'm looking for opportunities to get out there. I think that's one of the things that I need to do more, Jonathan and Skip. It's a little tough when you're locked in a hotel room, but when I'm back, I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? Who do I need to see? I go to a pancake, so it's those things where it's more community focused, but I know Geauga is a big county and getting out to meet other people. I'm going to need some help. So I'm making some phone calls, and I'm hoping to make some additional connections. But this is a good way for me to meet people in groups versus one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we still have the question. I will bring up, I'm going to mention the website again so that people have it, and social media. So I'm going to bring that up and see, I'll ask you on air when we come back from the break, where people can find you. And you've got a Facebook profile. Are you doing much by way of posting for your campaign on social media?
So you're going to ask that question, or am I live now?
Well, we're not live on the air yet.
Well, you're live to all our
okay.
streaming.
We're live on the podcast. Just pre-floating the question, I guess.
No, I do have a Facebook page, and I do have a few things posted, but it's more content driven
30 seconds.
Okay.
Versus, just me being out in the community, eating a pancake.
Yep. All right. Social media, Facebook.
Ten seconds.
It'll be alright, babe. Don't you know it's a pity the days
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga on WINT Radio with Skip Claypool, myself, Jonathan Broadbent, and our guest, Joe DeBoth. Joe, during the break, you asked a very important question, because people need to know where to find you and find out more about you. We've got the website. The website is Geauga.com, and you're also on some social media. So I understand you're on Facebook. How will people find you?
It's the same. It's Facebook, Joe for Geauga. So I don't have it's if you can get to it from my website, but
Okay.
it is Joe for Geauga, Facebook / whatever it is.
Joe, we'll find it.
I don't know if that's very helpful or not, but I didn't.
I don't think that people are going to find very many Joe, the number 4 Geauga, when they do a Facebook search. So
Yeah,
they'll find you.
Yeah, just do a search on the boss, my last name, and yeah, you'll find me, because not many boss out there as well.
And the spelling of the last name for search is DEBOTH, Joe
Yeah.
DeBoth, DEBOTH. So, a couple of things. I want to take a quick pause, and Joe, I do want to get back to what you were saying before the break, but I also want to recognize our followers on Rumble. We have a great question from Dorothy, who asks, Dorothy apparently just got the reminder for the Geauga County Women's Republican Club meeting. She asks, will Joe be there, or any other candidates that have been hosted by Voice of Geauga, and suggests that you bring signs if you do come. And I think you made the comment that you are aware of a couple of upcoming events and will try to make as many as possible. Is that the case, Joe?
Yeah, that's definitely the case. So I need to definitely get out there and meet more people, like I said before. So I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. I wrote down March 26th, so I'll look into that when I get home. I know people who belong to that, so I will make some contacts as soon as maybe after this call here, I'll start asking around. I know some people in the Republican Party, Jonathan, so maybe I could, and ladies as well. So those are the real movers for the Republican Party. So I will definitely make some calls, and I will hopefully be there on March 26th.
It sounds like a smart move. There's a note here that it is 6:30 p.m. at Geauga West Public Library. March 26th at 6:30 p.m., Geauga West Public Library. Sounds like it should be a great event, and I hope that you're able to make it. In between now and then, I don't know if there's enough time. If you don't have more yard signs to hand out, maybe you could get to the printer and get some, because it sounds like you have some willing folks here interested in putting some Joe DeBoth yard signs out. So we covered social media. Oh, I want to go back to what you were saying before the break. I unfortunately needed to interrupt you. You want to finish that train of thought?
Yeah, so the question was, what would I do like day one? And I said, before the break, tactical, I was getting into the strategic part of it, right? So what I would do, I would encourage, one, the folks that would report to me kind of a strategic plan for Geauga County. Because I think everything kind of comes from the planning piece. I would also kind of re-engage those to be willing, the different taxing authorities, to kind of talk about what do we want to do as a county, knowing that you have a sizable footprint in, whether it's a community, a township, or a local school. Let's just see who's willing to kind of work together on the plan. And that plan, coming from business, that drives how we invest monies, your taxpayers' money, so you know where it's going. It's not just an arbitrary, hey, I got a budget, I'm under budget, therefore I have to spend, right, to make up the gap. So the baseline is where I should have landed with the budget. So then the new baseline going into the following year is something that is filled by, I would say, unstrategic spending. And so I think the county has to invest dollars, but it should be driven by the community, and not by I would say agendas, if I can just say that safely here, which I think in some cases there's a line crossed with maybe the ADP department, where what I'm hearing that there are technologies being invested, but then all of a sudden they're being brought to the community. And so I would probably work things a little bit differently. I would say, okay, Russell Township, let's talk about your security system. Let's talk about what's best for you. And maybe I don't even be part of this conversation because I believe in some type of autonomy where they can make their own decisions on what's best for Russell, right? And what's best for Kenston, what's best for the Cardinal Schools, right? And then I'm the person that comes in and says, okay, how are you going to fund this, right? We have a tax base of X dollars, right? I think we can get a range from whether that's 40 to 42 million dollars, a kind of a high-low anticipating for property tax. So show me a budget that kind of falls in within that range, and talk to me about your strategic plan. So I don't know how Let's Chuck is doing that today. I hear some good things and bad things. I'm sure if I do it, you'll hear good things and some bad things too. So I'm not here to say that I'll do it better. I will say I will do it differently. I will engage it with a different mindset.
It sounds to me, Joe, like you're talking about a bottom up, like hearing from the community and then designing strategy and answers around that versus designing something top down and pushing it out to communities and forcing on people. And I'm glad that ADP came up because we have that question from Beth Welty. Beth Welty asks, can Joe speak to this move to unionize ADP in Geauga County? And just bringing our audience up to speed, there are many people in the community who are looking at the budget in Geauga County. It has ballooned, and there's huge growth in spending. And probably, arguably, leading the top of the list is a group called ADP, which you can think of as kind of the IT department of Geauga County. They have a huge, huge budget that has grown monumentally recently. So people started asking questions, and it appears in response to people digging around in the ADP department, they're making some moves to unionize. That's controversial, and I'm wondering, Joe, if you have an opinion on that matter.
Well, first and foremost, if you're an IT department and you have IT skills, right, and you're worried about losing your job, you shouldn't, because IT is one of the more the jobs that are in demand in the economy today. So I look at this and I'm like, well, what's really going on? So if I'm a network expert, or I'm a software engineer, right, and I have some skills that are marketable, why would I unionize, right? Why would I want to do this? And so maybe I'm looking at this very differently than maybe Geauga County is, but I think the employees, they have options within ADP. So having to unionize doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I think of union where my grandfather was a sheet metal worker, right, in Pittsburgh. He did the PPG, the big glass castle down in Pittsburgh. He built that from, well, we built the ductwork. And so, he explained to me the union, the purpose of the union, and the correlation of just unionizing at a time where we're embarking upon a primary. The timing seems suspicious to me, but I'm not going to comment on that. But to me, if you're an IT person, you have skills that can be, you can find a job elsewhere. So why unionize, right? Unless you're in the IT department and you don't have IT skills and you want to protect your job. So I'm not trying to characterize, who's qualified, who's not. But to me, it just doesn't make any sense from a business perspective why an IT department would unionize when they could go across the street and get a job. So we should be, if they're talented, we should be saying, hey, we're going to, how do we retain you versus let's unionize to retain you. So it just seems very backwards to me.
Yeah, and let me comment on that if you don't mind. As a management guy in business, when people wanted to talk about unionizing, that seemed to be a failure of management to me. And so I'm not sure what's going on in the ADP. ADP is a automatic data processing board. It's statutory. The county commissioners decided years and years ago to create that board. It's managed by the various departments that utilize the computer systems. The chairman of that board happens to be the auditor by statute, by law. And so the auditor, so you would be, if you were elected, the chairman of that particular board, but the board is the oversight organization for the computer department, if you will. And they've chosen to offer services to townships and others. And in my day, when I was a county commissioner, we didn't charge for those services. Today, they've chosen to start charging for those services to cover their cost, I guess. But since it's taxpayer dollars, I'm not even sure that makes any sense. But just to give you some background and perspective on that, I'm very curious about this myself and who's driving this and where the impetus is coming from, because we've never talked about that before in the county in terms of that organization unionizing, because normally unions are for, as you stated, some protective.
Skip, we're coming up on a break. Remember, you can join the conversation at 440-946-9468. More on the other side of the break.
Mics are off. Mics are off.
All right, so we're going to continue the conversation for the podcast. We see some, it looks like somebody was commenting that on Rumble, there was a repeat of a segment. I think that happens sometimes on Rumble in particular. If you go off of the app and come back in again, it may jump back a few seconds or a minute or so. You can actually bypass that easily, Rumble audience, by going to the little scroll bar at the bottom. In fact, I'm on Rumble right now looking at it myself, and I see that my live stream on Rumble is 2 minutes behind. So you can drag that little scroll bar and get current. And if it does jump again, you can do that, and it just brings you to the current conversation again.
You can also refresh the screen. So if you refresh the screen, that'll catch you up.
That's a good idea. That actually sounds easier than the little scroll bar, especially on the phone. Thanks, Skip.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, this is going to be our last segment. Anything you want to make sure to cover during our last few minutes on air?
Yeah, I think I want to just kind of cover my experience a little bit, right, and just sort of my approach to the auditor's office. It may be somewhat redundant, but I want to make sure I leave them with
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
I'm going to ask you to touch on one thing, Joe. Give people a reason why they should vote for you versus Chuck Walder. So you're running for the office. Tell people why it is you would be better, because they're going to have to make a choice. It's one or the other. Why you're the better choice.
And that's exactly, I think, where I was going, but I think you said it better.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool, myself, Jonathan Broadbent, and our guest, Joe DeBoth. Don't forget to come back tomorrow morning and join us at 7 a.m. as Abby King joins us. Abby King is running for a judge's position in Geauga County. Learn more about Abby King and her campaign tomorrow morning. So with our final segment, it's important that we get to know Joe DeBoth and why vote for Joe DeBoth. What's the difference? What makes you the right man for the job, Joe?
Well, we talked about, thank you for that, Jonathan, having a new pair of eyes, right, with a different skill set, I would say. And so when you look at me, you have someone who has been trained in finance and in systems and process. So I really kind of a combination of technology and finance. And I think I have a lot to bring to, I would say, the employees of Geauga, and in return, kind of elevate them, and then help them be a better public servant to the taxpayers like us. So I think my approach is going to be, I would say, build up and also collaborate. So you think about what I do for a living, right? Right now I'm currently a project manager for a sizable project. We're doing a sizable financial supply chain transformation. And what that requires is a significant, team that work together, we're aligned, we understand the mission, we understand the client, we listen to the client, we respect the client, and then it's all cyclical. Then we come up with some solutions, we present the solutions, and it's always a collaborative solution. So whether that's different than the current auditor, but I would definitely, I think you'll find in me someone who's going to listen, someone who's going to understand the financial needs and be able to articulate a vision for the county, for the townships, and for the schools. I know there's some bad blood, speaking of schools, I don't want to go to rabbit hole with some of the, I don't want to go down that path. But ultimately, I really want to re-engage the community and being a financial advisor to them and help them manage, not necessarily dictate, but be that, I would say, advisor to them where they can make their own decisions, but I can at least, give them a plan or some metrics would help measure themselves so they can stay within their budgets, right, and have good budgets for the community. So I think there are ways to do that. I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and just how to present this. It's going to take some time. It's not going to be overnight. I want to put that out there. This is not a quick fix. This is something that they need to get to know me. I need to get to know them. There needs to be this building of trust. So for me, I want to be able to have this trust factor with everyone that kind of has a direct line to me and an indirect line to me, including the commissioners, right? So I'm going to strive for transparency. I'm not going to play the shuffle game. I'm kind of a straight shooter, kind of no nonsense. This is what it is, right? Let's deal with it. It's not, and let's just resolve the problems as they come up, but also be very strategic of where we want to take the county. So I think that aspect is I would like to think I'm different for that, just because I've been trained on that, not because I'm just better. It's because I've had this 15 years of consulting experience from a top professional firm that has shaped me. I haven't shaped them; they shaped me. I went into this kind of a maverick. I came out of it as a project manager in the ability to listen. So I think that would be a very critical, I would say, characteristics for Geauga County that may or may not be different than the current one, but that's what I would bring to the table.
That sounds like a really important and very relevant comparison. So the understanding that I have of the current auditor's office, and this is I won't even say anecdotal. It comes from a lot of sources. Is the current tone and vibe of the auditor's office under the current administration is very dictatorial, my way or the highway. And I'll understand, Joe, if you don't want to directly comment on this, but I'll speak from my perspective. Everything that I'm hearing is that the auditor's office is going out in a really kind of jackboot approach. You have to do this, and this is the thing. You're accepting this, and then they're sending bills and invoices, and they're surprising some communities with invoicing for IT support and help, those kinds of things, versus an approach that you're describing that sounds much more like, hey, we're all part of the same team here. Let's talk, let's collaborate. Tell me what's needed, and I can use a 15-year skill set and experience to help guide you there. That's what I'm reinterpreting in lay terms. Is it appropriate to say that, Joe?
Yeah, I would have what we call in business a service level agreement, right? If we're outsourcing services like IT, those specifications on the services we get would be laid out, any cost factors, transactional cost, etc. That may or may not exist today, but there should be no surprises, right? And so if there are surprises in the community, that means that those terms have not been laid out and effectively communicated to the various townships slash taxing authorities. So I would lay that out in some type of agreement if there's going to be this shared service aspect where Geauga County would have some technology on behalf. And I would advocate that there are some advantages to that, right? I'm not saying it's a bad thing. If we could pull our resources and we can use certain technologies together, I think we all benefit from that if we can save dollars. But to say this is what you're going to use and how are you going to use it, that's something that needs to be negotiated with each township, et cetera. And that's something that I know it takes a little bit of time, but I would make sure that those terms would be communicated and understood before, in that signing a contract with a specific vendor that maybe provides IT services for the county.
And it sounds like there's a big element there of no surprises. Because if you do what you're describing and you spell it out and you have an agreement, an understanding up front of where the lines are drawn and whose responsibilities fall into which categories, and it's much less likely that suddenly an invoice goes out from the county auditor's department to some local municipal government that surprises them and shocks them with some sort of new bill, because then let's think about it in terms of that community. All of a sudden they have to scramble to come up with tax dollars to pay this bill for an IT department that they may have thought was a part of community county government. So we're coming up on the conclusion of our show. Joe, we've got about a minute and a half. I want to make sure to give you ample time to get your message out. What do you want to close with, Joe?
Well, I'm going to ask for your vote for those listening and those that are just curious and may look at this video later. I'm here to help, right? I'm not here to hijack, to take over. I'm hoping what you've heard from me is a tone of collaboration, right? Of respect, but also I have high expectations when it comes to financial compliance, and I believe the Geauga County employees will appreciate that. So if anything I said there resonates with you, I appreciate your vote, Republican vote on May 5th.
And remember, you can find out more at Geauga.com. And remember, of course, come back tomorrow morning and bring friends. Join us on social media. Don't forget to click the like button, follow, share the social media content for Voice of Geauga. We're on Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. That audience is growing. King comes on to join us. Bring your questions. You can call in or post them on social media. We'll do our best to get your questions answered. That'll be 7 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Hey,
Joe, thank you for coming.
And Jonathan, Monday we're going to have Marcel Sturbridge. Marcel Sturbridge on Monday. So
Marcel Sturbridge on Monday.
Yes.
Mark your calendar for both days. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.